All right, so we're going to play a game of import-export today. Import-export is a game where you're trying to create your own shipping empire by taking on contracts, shipping containers, even pirating other ships, and amassing the largest fortune that you can. At the end of the game, the player with the most money wins. It's pretty simple. Import-export is a game centered around multi-use cards, where each card represents an action you can perform, a contract you can take on, a good that will score at the end of the game, or a special power that lets you alter the game significantly. On your turn, you'll either be selecting a card from your hand to perform the action on a card, or you'll draw cards from the deck to refill and add to your hand. If you draw cards, play immediately passes to the next player. If you choose to take an action by playing cards, other players around the table have the option of also, also playing a card to follow along the action, or drawing cards into their hands themselves. So everyone's always involved on every turn. Play goes around the table until either someone reaches 50 credits, there are no other cards to draw, or someone's special ability triggers the end of the game. That's one of my favorite ways for the game to end. So let's look at how each player's harbor is set up. A harbor really tells you everything you need to know about the game, including what each action entails, what your current limits are, how to score credits at the end of the game. It's also where you'll keep your completed contracts, which give you those special game-changing abilities. When you complete a contract, you'll tuck it under the top portion of your harbor, and as you complete more contracts, you'll gain more and more abilities. Completing contracts also lets you hold more and more cards in the other areas of your harbor. The goods section of the harbor is where you'll tuck cards for scoring at the end of the game, and you can hold 2 times the number of completed contracts in your goods section. So if you have 2 completed contracts, and you always start with a base of 1. So if you have 2 completed contracts, you'll multiply that by 2, or you'll multiply 3 by 2, so you can hold 6 goods over in your goods side. If you look in the upper right corner of each card, 2 times the number of goods you have here also determines the level of contracts that you can currently take on. If you look in the upper right corner of each card, you'll see a set of pips. Each colored in pip represents a contract level, and for every good that you have of a certain type, you'll be able to take on 1 level higher contract of that goods type. So if you have, say, 2 technology goods, you'll be able to take on a 2-pip technology contract, a level 2 contract. You'll always be able to take on contracts where no pips are filled in, for example, on this one. And you'll always be able to take on a level 1 contract of the same color as your harbor. So for example, if this were my harbor, I'd be able to take on a level 1 contract, even if technology contract, even if I hadn't already shipped one. So moving on to the imports section. The import section of your harbor is where you'll tuck cards that give you extra actions during the game. For every card of a certain type that you have tucked in imports, you'll be able to take an extra action of that type. That's the action that was led for this turn. So if I choose, say, the load action, and I also have a load card tucked in my imports, I'd actually get to take 2 load actions on my turn. That also applies when you're following another player's action. In fact, even if you draw cards on another player's turn, if you have the chosen action in your imports, you'll still be able to take that action. So let's look at what those actions are now. To start off, there's a contract action, and that's the yellow cards. When you take a contract action, you'll choose a card still in your hand and tuck that under one of your ships. Once you have a contract on a ship, it stays there, and that determines the kind of container that you can load. And I like to actually turn my contracts this way so I can see as I put containers on there how many more I still have to load. So you can actually have more than 1 contract on a ship, but you can't have more than 6 containers on a ship unless you have an ability that lets you change that. Also, there are some abilities that will let you alter the container requirements, so be on the lookout for those. Once you have a contract on a ship, you can take the load action to put containers on the ship. The containers you load must match the requirements on the contract, yellow, yellow. And as soon as all of the contracts on the ship are fulfilled, that ship immediately goes out to sea. You'll take the contract from the ship and tuck it under your harbor. You'll tuck it under your harbor. Getting credits based on the number of containers on the ship. So I ship 2, I'll get 6 credits. And you'll put a card from the draw deck out on Supply Island. More on that in a bit. I really need to. So once ships are out at sea, there are 2 actions that let you interact with those ships, the import action and the pirate action. The pirate action is pretty straightforward. You'll play a red card to take the pirate action. You'll get to take a container off any ship currently at sea and load it onto one of your own ships that has a contract on it. It's actually legal to pirate a container that you can't load. You'll just discard that container. And that's actually a good way to empty your own ships to get them back into port, since a ship doesn't come back until it's empty. It's also a good way to stock your own ships if other players have been hoarding all the container types that you need. Next, the import action is one of the more fun and strategic parts of the game. When a player leads with the import action, for every import action in play, both with the lead card and any cards that you may have tucked in your imports, there will be an auction. The lead player chooses a ship out at sea. There's a blind bid for containers off that ship. Players secretly select a number of credits from their own pool that they're willing to pay. And everyone reveals, and whoever bid the most gets to select 2 containers off the ship. If the ship is empty, then it comes back to the harbor. The money goes to the bank. The owner of the ship gets 2 credits, unless the winner of the auction was the owner of the ship. And then the winner gets to either tuck one of the chosen cards in the import section of their harbor and one in their goods section, or they get to tuck both cards into the goods section. You can't tuck both in imports, even if you could hold them both. If there's more than one auction, only the people who have the same number of import actions get to participate in subsequent auctions. So if you have 2 import actions and I only have 1, there will be 2 auctions on that turn. But I'll only get to bid in the first one and basically win the second auction for free. Also, even if the lead player isn't participating in the subsequent auctions, that player still chooses the ships to auction from. As well, the lead player chooses who wins in the case of any ties, any tie bids. Finally, there's the supply action. It's also pretty straightforward. You'll select a card from Supply Island, tuck it in the import section of your harbor, or once per turn, you can sell a card from your hand to Supply Island and get 4 credits. You can only do the sell action once per turn, so if you get more than 1 supply action because of your tucked cards, you still only get to do that 1 sell. One last thing about choosing which action to play on a round. So those are the 5 actions. One last thing about choosing which action to play on a round. If you want to take an action but you don't have the corresponding card, you can always play 2 cards of the same type as a wild in order to take the action that you want, whether leading or following. So if you really wanted to take the load action, you could, say, discard 2 contract cards to load containers. So on your turn, you'll choose an action or draw cards. Other players will follow. And you'll go around and around the table until someone triggers the end of the game. While the end of the game is triggered when someone reaches 50 credits, that player may not necessarily be the winner. You'll count up the active credits, the pile of credits that you have, and then you'll check the goods that each player has tucked in their harbor. For the most part, each good is worth 1 credit, except illegal goods, which are worth 2 credits. And the player with the most of each type of good gets a bonus 6 credits, except for illegal goods, where the most player gets, player with the most loses 6 credits. And luxury goods actually get 8 credits. So if you have at least, and also if you have at least 1 of every kind of good, you'll get a bonus 10 credits too. So once all those credits are added in, player with the most credits wins. Okay, so on to setup. To set the game up, we shuffle the deck, seed Supply Island with a card for each player. So let's shuffle up the deck. Let's not. Shuffle the deck, seed Supply Island with a card for each player. Then each player puts a ship out at sea, and that gets seeded with 4 containers on it. And each player starts with 5 2-credit pieces. So that's a total of 10 credits each to start. And a hand of 5 cards. And with that, we're actually ready to start. All right, let's get going.